mid-January to show the CFL that they can operate that club. The Rough Riders would then be given to the non-profit organization by owner Alan Waters. The franchise, like all other CFL teams, has been operating without a profit now for years. There is a gentleman who says he has the money to buy and operate the Toronto Argonauts franchise. We'll have a full report on why he thinks he can make a real business venture out of the Toronto Argos when others have not been able to do the same. It's over, but the totaling of the profits and the losses for the year is just underway. In Regina, where the Rough Riders failed again to make the playoffs, a deficit of close to $750,000.
The last 3 years, the club has lost big money. 2 years ago, $300,000. Last year, $1 million. And this past season, $1.8 million. But helped by a successful lottery, that was dropped to a total of $678,000. These financial disasters have the club in the hole to the tune of $573,000. It's not hard to guess this cannot continue. Operating costs have helped put the Riders' ship on the rocks. In the past 6 years, those costs have risen 114%. The club has also done poorly at the gate and in other fundraising endeavors because the team has missed the playoffs a record 10 straight seasons. Not enough people care anymore, at least it seems at this point. A new executive was sworn in, led by incoming president Tom Shepard. He disappointed the packed meeting by asking fans to forget the past, and that's all he offered.
I don't know what you were looking for, but I was just nominated.
I guess something magic.
Well, there is no magic answers. I would hope that you would give us some time to get established with our new executive committee and get on with the task. We know what has to be done. We have plans, but we have to present those plans to our new executive committee. We have to evaluate our existing personnel, and we have to get on with it. But if you were looking for a miracle solution tonight, we didn't offer one and didn't plan on offering one.
Well, despite all the red ink around the Canadian Football League, a prospective buyer has stepped forward with an offer to take over the Toronto Argonauts. Martin Atkins says he has the money and the know-how to make the team a successful business venture.
In spite of scenes such as these at Argonaut home games, real estate magnate Martin Atkins wants to buy the team from its current owners, Carling O'Keefe. A former quarterback at Kent State who tried out for the Argos in the 70s, the Montreal-born Atkins has made his money in Toronto's condominium boom.
My interest is in a bottom line. I'm not doing this for tax write-offs. I'm interested in producing income. And I think that if the team were handled properly and promoted and marketed to the right segment, you'd probably be able to get 55,000 people to see an Argonaut game, and I don't think that that's outlandish at all.
According to Atkins, the drop in attendance and ratings for the Argos is partly a function of mismarketing.
It's today. It's 1986. It's not 1946. And the Argos have to change their mentality, and so does the CFL if it wants to stay alive.
Football, and we will talk live with Grey Cup winners Coach Al Bruno and Ben Zambiasi, of course, of the winning Hamilton Tiger Cats, and two of the top cats, Al Bruno and Ben Zambiasi, joining me on Sports Weekend. Well, last Sunday's Grey Cup game was supposed to be a mismatch. Not only were the Eastern champion Tiger Cats 12-point underdogs, but Eastern teams had won only 2 of the past 9 Grey Cup contests. Toronto Argos did it in '83, Alouettes in '77. When Hamilton and Edmonton met in Grey Cup '86, it was a one-sided mismatch, but the team holding the upper hand came from the East. A beautiful BC Place Stadium, a record crowd of nearly 60,000. Not that much support for Eskimos, who knocked off BC to win the West. Spectators treated to some old-fashioned, hard-hitting football from Hamilton. Ben Zambiasi coming up with his first of 2 fumble recoveries. Hamilton was on top of the Eskimos all day long, totally frustrating their offense. Zambiasi with that ball yet again. A long-awaited moment for Coach Al Bruno, a Grey Cup victory by an incredible 24 points. His first victory as a coach in his 3rd kick at the Cup. An important win for the spirits of the underdog Eastern teams. And, of course, a positive moment in the spotlight for team owner Harold Ballard. The city of Hamilton, well, they rejoiced with a parade for their heroes. For Al Bruno, a Grey Cup as a player, and now as a coach. Welcome, Coach. Has the feeling sunk in?
Terry, I'll tell you, the feeling's still there, and you know, it's such a great win for Hamilton, and I know the players want it so badly, and you saw the results. They went out there with a vengeance, and they proved all the critics wrong, and we were supposed to be beaten, but they didn't see it that way, and certainly you saw it on TV.
And I see it in your eyes also, and I saw it on the field with you, Ben Zambiasi, and the rest of the defensive corps. You were possessed.
Well, you know, it takes 12 guys to get the job done, and I think we reflected before the game. We didn't want to let the other 11 guys down, and we went out there with that kind of attitude, and it was a snowball effect from the week before when we beat Toronto. You know, come back from 26 points, you know, anything can happen, and we proved it Sunday.
Ben, you mentioned that comeback. Al, Bruno, you know so much about the comeback because you did it to the Argos. Did you fear at halftime Edmonton would turn around the tables and do it to you?
No, I didn't think that. We talked to the players at halftime, and they had that same mood, that same type attitude that you need to win. And I have to say, this guy sitting next to me and all the other the old 30 and over gang, they did a great job. They brushed off on the younger players, and they played just one hell of a football game.
Ben Zambiasi, if you're going to put it in a word, were you perhaps the team of destiny? Didn't you even have a dream about it?
I had a dream about 3 months ago that we played Edmonton and in the Grey Cup and won 35-10. This is the year of the Cat. There's no question that we were not going to be denied 3 times there, and you know, we had to overcome a lot of obstacles to get there, but we held together and we pulled together as a team, and it was just fantastic.
Al, Bruno, do you think this will have an impact on the perception of the East now that you've done it, you won it all?
Well, I told that exactly to the Commissioner Mitchell. I hope this really starts to balance out the league. I think it was a great win for the East. I'm sure Toronto will also admit to that. But I think it's over. I think we need more balance in the league, and I think it's there right now. And if we can continue now and do a positive job in the entire league and help the East and help the West, and just make it one great big football game that it should be. And we need all the help we can get, and let's hope it proves something and gets this league back on its feet.
Oh, did you ever prove something? I thank you for coming into our studios today. Al Bruno, coach of the Tiger Cats, Ben Zambiasi, great game.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
In control, Mike Kerrigan throws to the corner for Steve Stapler. 35-yard touchdown, 7-0 Tiger Cats. Third quarter, Kerrigan goes up top again. This time he finds Ron Ingram, 44 yards. The Tiger Cats win the 1986 Grey Cup Championship, 39-15.
Head coach Jack Gotta and general manager Bill Quinter were both fired. Bill Baker is the new general manager. Baker is a former all-star defensive end. He wanted a new image for the club. With that, he named Bill Baker, a former all-star defensive end, as the new general manager. In particular, the league's general managers meeting in San Diego have voted in favor of imposing salary ceilings and freezing the player roster at 24. The remaining players would be cut, then re-signed for less money. The salary ceiling is $2.5 million. Now, many clubs already have payrolls over the $3 million mark. So it is a drastic move by the team owners, one, of course, necessitated by the drastic loss in television revenues in the future.
The University of British Columbia Thunderbirds, he's a Richmond, BC native. He goes at 6'5", 260 pounds. Now, the Edmonton Eskimos had 2 selections in the first round. Picking out of the number 2 and 3 positions, they took Blake Marshall, who I think can play in the CFL, a good running back from the Western Ontario Mustangs, and Todd Storm, who is from Red Deer, Alberta, played his football at the University of Utah, and he is a lineman. The great story today is the British Columbia Lions, 7 of 25 selections, 7 of the first 25. They had 2 in the first round. The Lions took 2 linemen, Tony Visco from Purdue University in the Big Ten, and Larry Clarkson, a lineman from Montana. We'll have more in the Canadian Football League draft.
Slug below the belt this week, the CTV network announced it would not be carrying any CFL games at all this coming season, and that means you'll be able to watch them on CBC. However, they still have not decided how many they are carrying. Football League games this coming season, you'll only find them here on the CBC. The CTV network will not carry any CFL games at all this coming season.
The CFL faces a black eye because of blackouts. CTV has announced it will not broadcast CFL games this fall. The first time in 26 years the network has not carried CFL games.
Well, we'd like to have a little bit of relief in the Toronto-Hamilton area was one, of course. The league appears to want to get involved in producing the games. That's something we've done for 25 years here, and we know how to do it, and we're prepared to give that up, really.
Losing CTV will certainly hurt the CFL's exposure. Worse still might be the loss of TV rights revenue from CTV. Under its previous TV contract with Carling O'Keefe, each CFL club made approximately $1.2 million a year from TV rights. Thus far, only CBC has agreed to show the CFL this fall at a reported $1.75 million. That's just $195,000 per club. And for 88, no one knows.
If they do a one-year deal and they wish to come and talk to us again next fall, we're going to be here. But they may do a long-term deal. I don't know what they're going to do.
You'll be here, maybe they won't.
No comment.
Bit of sun. At 10 o'clock this morning, hopeful Toronto Argo Sunshine Girls strutted their stuff. The auditions are held every year in an attempt to find the most exuberant and talented cheerleaders for the home team. They got money.
It'll be another 2 years before Kelly and Rob Watson get to use those tickets for life at the completed Sky Dome. And with a 650-kilometer round trip from Wallaceburg to Toronto, they could be very expensive free tickets. Paul Dolby, Global News.
For a first-hand look at this city's potential, Bill Baker reports.
This afternoon's tour got off to an unexpected start at the University of Windsor. The Commonwealth Games president had to become something of an athlete himself. He ran through a series of sprinklers to get inside the St. Denis Center, but he came through it smiling. Dent is here to look over some of the facilities that would be available if Windsor is chosen to host the 1994 Commonwealth Games. He was told an athlete's village would go in at the university and be turned into permanent housing once the games were over.
We're hoping that the legacy effect would be a magnificent one in terms of housing. And in terms of housing the athletes, we'd have brand new facilities for them.
Another stop was St. Clair College, where badminton events would be staged. Dent seemed impressed with what the city has to offer.
I think that these facilities are excellent, and there is no way that one can't see that the games could be hosted here without any great problem.
But Dent isn't going to predict if Windsor will be chosen to host the games.
We have 9 cities. We know that of the 9, all of them are capable of doing the job. And so therefore, I think that Windsor has to be realistic, as do the others, and say, okay, there are 9 of us in the running and only 1 of us can win.
Dent says the next part of the selection process will be up to a site evaluation team. They'll be in town later in the summer, and their choice will be made in late November. Then the Canadian city will become part of an international competition to make the final choice for the location of the 1994 Commonwealth Games. Bill Baker, CBC News, Windsor.
Before coming to Windsor, Ivor Dent scrutinized London's facilities. It's another Canadian city racing to host the Commonwealth Games. But as Maureen Taylor reports, Windsor has at least one advantage over London. She traveled there to check out one of our main competitors.
On the surface, London's bid for the 1994 Commonwealth Games looks a lot like Windsor's bid. London is also in desperate need of new and more modern sports facilities. In its bid, London has proposed building a velodrome and field house at the University of Western, a 35,000-seat stadium near Highway 401, and an aquatic center on this city-owned property. The total cost of these facilities would be just over $68 million. Unlike Windsor, London wouldn't have to build a games village. The university already has enough residences to accommodate all the athletes. Another plus for London is Fanshawe Lake, the rowing facility Windsor would have to borrow should it get the games.
I would think that London is a logical choice.
Bill Brady is the vice chairman of London's bid committee. He's originally from Windsor, but he still thinks London would be the better host city.
But London has a unique set of qualities, one of which is our enormous medical and scientific center. We plan to mount a major sports medicine, sports science congress here during the Commonwealth Games if we're fortunate enough to be awarded them in '94.
We would have to start now to get that money together.
Art Cartier couldn't disagree with Brady more. He's on the city's control board. London's bid calls for a $10 million contribution from City Council, but Cartier doesn't believe that's a realistic figure.
It can't be on the basis of it's an event, on one basis alone, that it's event 7 years down the line without any consideration of $10 million in 1987 or $10 million in 1994 dollars.
Cartier was one of 5 city councillors who voted against bidding for the games. Those 5 felt taxpayers' money would be better spent on fixing roads and sewers.
Our backlog in authorized sidewalks and things like that, the basic things that people talk about and look at is several years behind.
My answer to a politician who uses that rationale is the feds are going to put up 50 mil, the province will put up 50 mil. $100 million is going to be spent on the Commonwealth Games somewhere in Canada, so why not in our city?
The vote did pass, and London is in the running for the Games, but the dissension continues. That dissension could deal London a fatal blow in its bid for the Commonwealth Games. The Games Committee likes to see community enthusiasm, and if the politicians are seen as lukewarm, it's an indication the public may be too. In London, for CBC News, I'm Maureen Taylor.
Are in a make-or-break-it season. The team shows a promise, but as we hear in this report from Al Nagy, the fans are demanding more than mere promises.
This is supposed to be the land of the Jolly Green Giants, but nobody's laughing around here anymore.
Set!
The question mark for the Saskatchewan Roughriders this season is not whether they're going to make the playoffs for the first time since 1976, but rather is this team going to survive the 1987 season. All the reports we've been hearing about their financial troubles are true. And their new general manager, Bill Baker, is going to have his work cut out for him, trying to make the Saskatchewan public believe in this team.
People are smiling at us again. They're glad to see us. They're waving at us in our cars. A few months ago, they were making obscene gestures. Now they're waving, which is a big improvement.
Yes, but the Riders need a big improvement on the field. The best marketing plan in the world won't attract the fans this season, and their new head coach is aware of that.
If we can play well on the field. Had they played well on the field, then this franchise would not be in trouble. We need to play well on the field for this franchise to be successful.
It's hard to take these guys seriously anymore. We keep hearing about positive signs.
It looks like there's a lot of positive signs that weren't there in the past. You know, whether it happens this year with a new coaching staff and new quarterbacks and, you know, young rookies playing quarterback and stuff like that is a different question. But, you know, the signs for improvement are here right now.
It's brought us together as a team. We have a lot better spirit and a lot better unity than we had a year ago. We all know we're in the same boat together. That's kind of a unique situation.
Go! Time is running out for these guys. They began the season with a $700,000 deficit. And if they don't get the province back on the Rider bandwagon, this team could fold in July. It's up to Bill Baker to prevent that.
Nearly 77,000 tickets for this season during a 16-hour province-wide TV and radio broadcast. Now, the number of tickets could translate into more than $1 million in revenue, so that's pretty good, and that is it in sport.
Plays and replays, the excitement of CFL 87, every Saturday night starting June 20.
Field Regina, Saskatchewan losing to the Calgary Stampeders in the final seconds. Calgary was down 16-0. They tied the game at 16 all at the half. Let's pick up the play in this football game in the second half. The Calgary Stampeders are leading by a score of 22-21. The rookie quarterback Jeff Bentram eluding the rush and will go in for the touchdown. Saskatchewan regaining the lead on this Bentram touchdown, 28-21. And you know, those sensational fans out in Saskatchewan were loving every minute of it. However, they were very quiet in the final minute of the game. Calgary driving 85 yards. Rich Warman finding Larry Willis from 14 yards out with 31 seconds to go. Calgary won it on the J.T. Hay convert. The Stampeders down 16-0 in the first half. Come back this afternoon to win by a single point. A good league opener for the CFL at Taylor Field. Quickly in baseball.
Stampeders and Saskatchewan Roughriders should open the 1987 CFL season. Calgary stayed alive through a financial drive last season, and this year the Green Riders did likewise. But for all the Rider pride in Saskatchewan through telethons and ticket-thons, the bottom line remains on the turf, where field goals and touchdowns and ultimately victories will tell the story. Saskatchewan and Calgary both looking to get out of the gate quickly this afternoon as the CFL season got underway at Taylor Field.
It was 3-0 Saskatchewan when running back Tim McRae finds a hole on 2nd and 10, and McRae goes 34 yards for the first touchdown of this CFL season. Mike McTagg, however, missed the point after. But it appeared as if the Riders would not need that single point. They had their offense in high gear in the first quarter. Jeff Bentram to Ray Elgard, and it's 16-0 after 15 minutes. Stamps began to turn things around in the second quarter. Ron Hopkins picks off a deflected pass. And Hopkins returns the ball 15 yards and gives the Stamps good field position. 2 plays later, Rick Warman finds Emmanuel Tolbert, 23-yard pass, and it was 16-10. Third quarter, it was 19-16, and the Saskatchewan defense records a safety in the end zone on Rick Warman. It made it a 21-16 game, but J.T. Hay was Mr. Accuracy for the Stampeders. 2 more field goals put them back in front by 1. Seesaw battle continued, though, with Saskatchewan rookie quarterback Jeff Bentram celebrating his birthday, a 23-yard touchdown, putting the Riders in front 28-22. But Rick Warman has the last celebration. He caps off a last-minute drive with a 15-yard touchdown pass to Larry Willis. Only 31 seconds left on the clock, and the Stampeders pull out a victory. They defeat the Riders in Taylor Field, 29-28.
Montreal Alouettes are no more.
Football fans in Canada. We'll have that story and the rest of the sport.
CFL fans today, and this could be the beginning of worse things to come, I suppose.
A very disturbing day, a very sad day. The Canadian Football League lost a major battle in its struggle to survive. The Montreal Alouettes have folded on the eve of their season opener. Tony Ross has this report from Montreal.
It all happened very fast. Just a few days ago, the Alouettes practiced for their season opener. Today, they walked out of the stadium unemployed.
Guys were looking forward to the first game and beating Toronto and that. And then after the practice, there was sort of hedging towards a meeting or something, and then they said to go home.
The players were told they were out of jobs at a team meeting this morning. Management says it was just a question of economics. They couldn't sell enough tickets to stay in business.
There was not enough interest in the Montreal Alouettes in the Montreal area to proceed with the 1987 season, and we're at a season ticket base of 4,000 tickets. It just is not enough to function with.
The players say the fans were waiting for the Alouettes to win before they bought tickets. But the league president says the CFL couldn't wait.
It would be worse to start the season and not get through the season. If there was any doubt about it, let's fold the franchise and get on with the business of the operation of the league and not worry about whether or not a team may or may not make it through the course of the season.
The Alouettes did have their glory years.
This time, Sam is going to throw it. It's a long one to Caroline, all by himself at the 40.
They were a winning team in the 50s and in the 70s. In all, the Alouettes won 4 Grey Cups. But in the 80s, the tide began to turn. The team couldn't win. One of the Alouettes' owners, Nelson Scalbania, left behind a debt of $6 million. People say the Alouettes simply never recovered. Today, they cease to exist.
Montreal is where football began. When McGill and Harvard used to play, I mean, this was the place for football. And it's a sad testimony, you know, a day when this city packs it in and says, we're not interested anymore.
For Montrealers, it's one less game to go to.
I guess it's sad for the team and for the people that like football in Montreal. But for myself, I'm just indifferent.
I think it's a shame because Montreal relies on its teams to keep the morale up. And without the Alouettes, I mean, they're in a lot of trouble.
Some players blame the team for poor marketing and blame the CFL for not selling Canadian football well enough. Now, without Montreal, without a team in Canada's second largest market, Canadian football fans have to be wondering if time is running out on the CFL too. Tony Ross, CBC News, Montreal.
And the league schedule will now be cut to 72 games from 81. However, each team will still play an 18-game schedule. A draft of the Montreal players will be held on Friday. And the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, now in the Eastern Division, will open their season tomorrow night against the Toronto Argonauts. The Argos were to have played Montreal tomorrow night. And CBC was to have carried the Winnipeg-Edmonton game Saturday evening in the CBC's first telecast of the year. Now, with Winnipeg playing in Toronto tomorrow night, they certainly will not be playing Edmonton on Saturday, so the TV schedules are also in jeopardy of going down the tube. Windsor
declare bankruptcy and quit the CFL. Erupting Alouettes drop the ball. Worker versus worker
has folded up and died. The Montreal Alouettes are no more. The team used to be the jewel of Canadian football, the mightiest, the proudest. But in the last few years, the team wobbled, debts piled up, fans turned away. And unlike other struggling teams in the CFL, the Alouettes just couldn't make it work. The magic was gone, and it seems nothing could bring it back. We have 2 reports, the first from Paul Workman in Montreal.
The Alouettes practiced for a season that never began in a city that's had a pro football team for 41 years. Not anymore. As of today, the game is over.
We've come to the edge of the bluff here in Montreal, and we've just fallen over.
And the reason it went over, not enough fans, not enough paying customers, a problem that's common to the shaky Canadian Football League. The Alouettes sold only 4,000 season tickets, down from last year and the year before that and the year before that. The owners say they tried everything to save the team short of a public appeal, but couldn't get Montrealers interested.
The economics are just staring us right in the face, and the people of Montreal have told us very clearly of what their interest level is.
It's supply and demand. The demand wasn't there, the supply was there, and you just can't make it live that way.
The Alouettes did have their glory days.
This time Sam is going to throw it.
Sam the Rifle Echeverry in the 50s throwing his long winning passes. George Dixon in the 60s running touchdowns. And in the 70s, the highly paid American star running back Johnny Rogers. The Alouettes made it to the Grey Cup 3 times in the 50s, won it 3 times in the 70s. Years when 50, 60,000 fans paid to see them play. But there was little glory in the 80s when high-flying businessman Nelson Scalbania bought the team. By the time he went broke, the Alouettes were $6 million in debt and never really recovered in spite of name changes and new owners.
I hate to see it. Football's been my life, my education, and it's kind of sad. I just hope that somehow something can happen and I'll get it back again.
Peter Della Riva played with the Alouettes for 14 years. Willie Thomas was supposed to play his first season with the team this year.
When McGill and Harvard used to play, I mean, this was the place for football. And it's a sad testimony, you know, a day when this city packs it in and says, we're not interested anymore.
Once before, when the team folded, it was quickly resurrected. The mayor of Montreal says he'd like to do the same thing this time.
I think that we'll have to take a couple of days to see what can be done.
League officials say this is not the beginning of the end for the CFL. If anything, it could strengthen it. But a lot of football fans may have trouble believing that when a city the size of Montreal can't even support a team. Paul Workman, CBC News, Montreal.
Let's go, Reno Connor. It seems almost part of the game. The Canadian football teams teeter on the brink of financial disaster. Usually, someone comes to the rescue. 2 years ago, the Calgary Stampeders nearly went under.
If we lose the Calgary Stampeders, we lose part of Calgary.
The public was rallied, and with the help of a snappy marketing campaign, the team was saved. This year in Regina, same thing. Only a telethon kept the Rough Riders in the game. In past years, even the federal government has had to come to the rescue, barring American leagues from expanding into Canada.
Any intrusion of American leagues into Canada is bound to end up in killing Canadian football.
But no one's going to save the Montreal Alouettes. And so the question is, how much longer will the league survive?
Life goes on, and I think with the new schedule that we finalized and the ability of the other 8 teams to close ranks and make the league even stronger, I think that we've postured ourselves well for the future.
For the first time ever, the CTV network isn't carrying football games this year. Though the network's head of sports says this season is crucial for the CFL.
They have to survive this year. This is their year. They can survive with 8 teams. But the competition amongst those 8 has to be good.
With CTV out, the Football League has created an independent network, the Canadian Football Network.
It was a marketing consideration. We felt that our games could be better exposed to our public.
The CFL has lifted some of the traditional TV blackouts it's always insisted on in some markets. That's made some broadcasters optimistic the CFL will make a comeback.
I think that they're safe, certainly for this season, and I would hope for many seasons to come.
The CFL can survive the loss of the Montreal Alouettes, but even diehard supporters say it can't afford to lose another team. And that's why this season is so important. There's no room left for a weak club, so Canada may finally have reached the point where it will have either good football or no football.
Veterans reflect on the demise of the Montreal club and the future of the CFL. They tried changing the name, they tried changing the image, they got new owners, a new stadium, and at one point they got help from the federal government. But in the end, the Montreal Alouettes just could not sell football in Montreal.
As you heard on the National, the sudden death of the Alouettes today shocked football fans across the country. But it was no great surprise. Despite past glories, the Owls have been having trouble on the field and at the box office for years.
They were once the team to beat in the East. Back in the 50s, stars like quarterback Sam Etcheverry led the mighty Montreal Alouettes to the Grey Cup game 3 times. Then again in the 70s, Montreal dominated the CFL's Eastern Conference. They took home the Grey Cup 3 times that decade. In 1970. Next in 74. And again in 77 after this sloppy, slippery match against Edmonton. That was the year the Alouettes moved into Olympic Stadium. It was also the last year they won the Grey Cup. Montreal fans back winners, and when the Alouettes stopped winning in the early 80s, the fans stopped coming, in droves. The franchise racked up huge financial debts. Nelson Scalbania swooped in 1981 to rescue the team from bankruptcy. He took a risk on pricey U.S. imports like Vince Ferragamo and lost. The next year, Scalbania, $5 million poorer, turned over the team to Charles Bronfman and a mascot. In 1982, the Alouettes became the Concords, but no matter how you spelled it, their name was still mud. It seemed the only thing the Concords could win was the dubious honor of being the worst football team in North America. Last year, the team changed their name back to the Alouettes, but it didn't fool the fans. The franchise lost $4 million last season and managed to sell less than 5,000 season tickets this year.
Joining us now from Montreal, 2 Alouettes who lost their jobs today, tight end Nick Araki and linebacker Mark Hopkins. And in Toronto, Leo Cahill, general manager of the Argonauts. He began his CFL career with the Alouettes. Nick Araki, I guess you care about the Alouettes, but the team only drew 100,000 people in Montreal last year, so I guess we have to say maybe Montreal didn't care enough.
Well, I think by the turn of events today, that's probably the result of what you just said. We didn't do a very good job of selling our product to the Montreal community, and as a result, we're in the situation we're in today. Not a very good one, but it's something we have to deal with.
Mark Hopkins, when you were playing, did you get the impression that you were playing as part of a great football tradition that the city really cared about?
No, I feel that the tradition that we had known was from previous years, and that the tradition had seemed to be passed. We were looking to build a new tradition, and it just seemed from the turnout of the fans and just from the type of publicity that we got that it wasn't to be.
Leo Cahill in Toronto, what killed the Alouettes? Was it management? Was it the city? What?
I think probably the biggest disaster of the Alouettes came just a few short years ago when Nelson Scalbania had that unfortunate situation over there where he brought in a lot of high-priced players, and you know, things just didn't materialize. Then the team went bankrupt, and I think the thing that really hurt the Alouettes more than anything else, and I had my start in football in Montreal with the Alouettes, and I'm very saddened by this quick turn of events, but I think the thing that really hurt them more than anything else was losing their name and having to be called the Concords, and I think it lost a lot of the French support. And it was something that was going to take some time to rebuild, and I think in the process, they just didn't have enough time and enough money to do the job.
Must have been more than that, though, because they drew 476,000 people in 1977, and it went straight downhill until last year it was 100,000. Has to be more than a name change.
Well, that was 1977. That was before the Scalbania incident, I believe, wasn't it? My mind wanders a little bit right now, but I remember the 1977-78 season very well because I was coaching the Argonauts at the time, and actually it was our football team that was playing against Montreal when they broke that all-time record of over 69,000 fans, which never will be duplicated because they've taken seats out of that stadium. But in the ensuing years, since 1977 and 78, they've had some things that just didn't materialize for them, and I think that the fans over there grew restless, and I don't know why fans change like they have in Montreal, because as I said, I started in Montreal, and the fans were great over there, used to take the players to their homes, and were out at practice at all times, and you know, we really felt that they were tremendous fans at that time.
Well,
but
Mark Hopkins, what was it like playing in that stadium in front of a handful of people over the last little while?
Well, you find that, for one thing, you're never nervous. There are never enough fans to create that kind of atmosphere. But in another way, it's kind of sad that enthusiasm is never really generated, and the team never really gets that feedback from the fans to really show them what they can do.
Do you think, Leo Cahill, that the CFL has done everything that it could to prevent this?
Well, that's difficult to say. I think that being in meetings in the past, I know that there was a great effort made to keep that franchise in Montreal. And one nice thing about this thing is that I've seen a lot of franchises go amiss and end up owing a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of players a lot of money and a lot of debts and so on and so forth. They're breaking clean on this thing, and I think they're to be admired for that. But it's difficult to say whether more could have been done. There was a short time element in there, and I think that they probably think that they did about as much as could be done.
Nick Araki, it's been said for the last little while by some analysts that the problem with the Alouettes is that French Canadians simply don't like football. Is that your impression?
Well, that's not the impression I get from going out and talking with the people, and we've done quite a bit of that in the last few years. I think it's too simple to just go and say, well, it was the Scalabania era that killed football in Montreal, or it was bad marketing. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and it's something that the rest of the league now has to deal with.
Well, that brings us to this other matter, of course, and Mark Hopkins, maybe I could ask you about this. There are other teams which, if not close to bankruptcy, are at least close to a sort of perilous situation. They're not making a whole lot of money. Is it your sense that this might just be the beginning of the end for the CFL?
You're certainly correct in saying that a lot of teams are in jeopardy now. They do not have the cash flow really to sustain the team for a number of years. They seem to be going to the well with the people from the individual provinces in an emotional effort to try and rally the people behind the team. I don't know how often they can be able to do that without some solid marketing and you know, and the people of Canada believing in the CFL.
Leo Cahill, good thing or bad thing?
Yeah, well, can I butt in right there and say that I've been in the league a lot longer than these two young men have been in the league and been around the league, and there's always been a trouble spot or two every year since 1960. But the sum and substance of this whole thing is that there was the Continental Football League, the USFL, the World Football League, and a couple more leagues, and they were all going to put the Canadian Football League out of business, and we're still in operation. And teams like the Saskatchewan Roughriders have always had to have big banquets and off-field activities and things to sustain their football team, but they've always managed to do that, and they've done it again this year.
But this team is gone, and the CFL hasn't had to deal with anything like that in its modern history.
Well, what I'm concerned about more than anything else is the fans in Montreal. They're the ones that let the football team down. Football is still very prevalent in Canada. There's still a lot of interest in the West in football. There's still a lot of interest in Toronto. And the Canadian Football League will exist, and it'll get bigger and stronger. And I think out of all of this, 8 football teams playing with parity, with a good playoff system, and with a lot of competition will probably improve the play in the Canadian Football League without the Montreal Alouettes.
Do you agree?
There's only 2 ways for it to go. It's either going to dissipate, or it's going to have to get stronger to make up for Montreal's loss. And I have to believe, along with Mr. Cahill, that the league will get stronger and that it'll continue to flourish a little bit more than it has right now.
Well, Nick Araki, I guess you're out of a job. Where do you go from here?
Well, right now we have a 48-hour period to wait, and that's the waiver period. In that time, any team in the league can pick us up, and if that's the case, then I will report to that team and continue my career. If I am not picked up by a team, then I will resume working in the real world. I have my degree in commerce, and I've been working the last 5 years in that field, and whatever happens will happen, and I'm prepared for either option.
Well, Leo Cahill, you're in a position to hire some people. you must run your eye down the list, and you must be able to tell me how many Montreal Alouettes will be playing football a week from now.
Well, I think one of the encouraging things about all of this, if there is encouragement to be had, is that there are about 38 players available that were good enough to make the Montreal team and make a professional football team, and certainly there will be probably 15 or 20 of those players that will be grabbed off in a hurry and have an opportunity to fulfill their ambitions, and that's have a professional career.
What about these guys?
Well, they're two very fine prospects, but we're not going to tip our mitt over here until the time comes when the draft comes, because we'll draft third, and we don't want to say who we'd pick first, or somebody might grab them in front of us.
Nick Araki, would you have won this year or come close? How good were you?
Well, we'll never know. You know, that's obvious now, but I think we had a very good team. We had a great coaching staff this year, one of the best I've been associated with, in Coach Fergelli, and the last thing I told him today is that for the first time in a long time, he'd brought back fun to football, and the guys were really enjoying themselves and working very hard. He was one coach that you wanted to work real hard for and get something done for, and it's too bad we'll never know that answer right now.
Mark Hopkins and Nick Araki in Montreal, Leo Cahill in Toronto, thanks very much for this. So long.
Thank you.
Montreal Alouettes, formerly the Montreal Concorde, formerly the Montreal Alouettes, went cleats up today. The team folded as the CFL Commissioner Doug Mitchell blames the collapse on a lack of season ticket sales, only 4,000. Now what happens? Well, Winnipeg Blue Bombers will now move into the CFL Eastern Division. They'll open the Toronto season tomorrow night. Now how do the Argos feel about the folded Alouettes?
Although Montreal's out and Winnipeg's in, the Argos will stick to their game plan. Any adjustments will be minor.
It's just kind of a surprise thing, and I think the most important thing in the ball game is going to be just how well we can do our thing and not worry about the fact that we haven't prepared like we normally do, because once the whistle blows, it becomes an emotional thing, and the team that's out there doing the most to win football games from an effort standpoint, and hopefully our execution will be good enough to help us win his first game.
As for future roster additions from Montreal, Obilovich wasn't even aware of Friday's dispersal draft of Alouettes.
Is that what they're doing? I didn't even know that. So that's another surprise. We know their personnel pretty well, and you know, we take pride in knowing that, and we're well aware of their Canadian content, which is important in our league. And I think they have one or two import players we'd be interested in, but I don't think you're going to see you know, us looking for a lot of players from their team.
In Toronto, I'm Rob Sinclair for CBC.
No more. Those stories when we return. Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian Football League went for a quick fix. They signed Fred Bolitnikoff, Vince Ferragamo, David Overstreet, Keith Gary, and James Scott. The owner of that team didn't last the year. Since, several new owners have tried to repair the damage, but as Vic Rauter reports today, they lost the battle.
It's really a case of better now than later. CFL Commissioner Doug Mitchell admits the Alouettes could have survived for a few early games this year, but not much more. Despite having $2 million in the bank to start the season, they estimated a loss of between $3 and $5 million. So they decided to call it quits now.
But it was the feeling of the Board of Governors that it would be worse to start the season and not get through the season. If there was any doubt about it, let's fold the franchise and get on with the business of the operation of the league and not worry about whether or not a team may or may not make it through the course of the season.
And to compensate for the loss of Montreal, Winnipeg will join Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton in the CFL Eastern Division as the league goes to a couple of four-team divisions. The top 3 teams in each division will then make the playoffs, with the first-place team getting a bye to the division final. Plans to save the Alouettes included financial support from the other 8 teams, or possibly moving the club to another city, but neither idea got past the talking stage. As for the Montreal players, they will be paid for Thursday's scheduled game against Toronto. They will then be made available to other CFL teams in a dispersal draft on Friday afternoon. And of course, the Alouettes folding immediately raises the question of a National Football League team moving into Montreal. Mitchell says he has talked with NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle.
He's very aware of the Montreal situation.
But he's not going to come in. Has he told you that, or is
Beyond that, I'm not going to make any comment.
My connections in the States say as long as there's a CFL team or a CFL league in Canada, we're not going to look north of us.
So the CFL now goes to an 8-team league. The optimist says stronger than ever. The pessimist will wonder for how much longer.
Montreal has been without a professional football team.
Bombers playing the Toronto Argonauts in Toronto. It's a hurry-up game for the Bombers as they were anticipating their first game Saturday against the Eskimos in Edmonton. With the demise of the Montreal Alouettes, the Bombers were switched to the Eastern Conference and they take on Toronto. CFL coverage begins Saturday on the CBC. You will now see the hottest rivalry in the league, the Calgary Stampeders and the Edmonton Eskimos. That's Saturday evening here on Windsor 9. That the franchise was allowed to die. Berger says the team at least deserved to go out with a shout, not the whimper that it went out with. Meantime, St. Mary's University by the club. The university was used as the spring training site of the Alouettes this summer.
Absolutely nothing that can be done to save the Montreal Alouettes. All the players will be put in a dispersal draft tomorrow, and there's no chance of the city coughing up with the funds. Doré also blasted the CFL for not giving any warning of the collapse, as it had done with other cities like Regina. He says the league's relations with the city of Montreal have not been terrific, and we here in Windsor want a CFL franchise? Are you kidding me? Let me tell you what happened tonight as the CFL season kicked off for the Toronto Argonauts. Winnipeg beats Toronto 38-30. Let's go to CNA Stadium. We'll show you what happened there. We pick it up, and the quarterback has already fumbled. That's Dan Barrett, and this is Daryl Sampson scoring for Winnipeg. It's 7-0, Winnipeg with the lead. But Barrett will come back with the Argonauts. He will look for Gil Finnerty. And watch for number 6 in the end zone. He'll get him right there, and the score is tied at 7 in the first quarter. But back will come Winnipeg, Tom Clements, the quarterback. He rolls out to the right, and watch this. This ball is going to be tipped in the end zone. Look who gets it. That's Jeff Boyd, and at this point, it's 17-10 for Winnipeg. Barrett will make this thing close. He gets hit right here. Barrett again is going to get hit. Sturdivant will pick up the ball for Winnipeg. He goes all the way in, 27-10 at this point. It was 34-13 for Winnipeg at the half, but the Argonauts will come back. John Kanjimi is the quarterback now for the Argos. He'll get the touchdown to Darrell Smith, 37-27, but not enough. Final score, Winnipeg over Toronto, 38-30. And I would like to tell you that CFL coverage begins Saturday on CBC. You'll see the hottest rivalry in the league, Calgary Stampeders. Okay, Calgary. And the Edmonton Eskimos, that's Saturday night right here on Channel 9.
Toronto last night. Marty's here to tell us what happened.
We'll have that in a moment, too. Big upset has been getting lots of press lately, and with yesterday being a slow baseball day, it's fitting that the opening of the football season in Toronto heads the sports news before baseball. Last night, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers linebacking unit produced 3 of Winnipeg's 4 touchdowns en route to a 38-30 victory over the Toronto Argonauts.
It was just like old times for the Argos offensive line, also known as the sack pack. Darrell Patterson with a free shot at Danny Barrett. The other bomber, Daryl Sampson, picks up the fumble and scores. 7-0 Winnipeg. But the Argos drive back. Kick returner, running back, receiver. Gil Finnerty does all 3, catching his first CFL touchdown. A 7-yard pass from Barrett to tie it at 7. It was tied at 10 early in the second quarter when Tom Clements, injured for most of last season, ducks under the sack attempt and hits Jeff Boyd with the 17-yard pass to give the Bombers a 17-10 lead on the deflection. The beginning of the end for Toronto. 5 minutes later, Tyrone Jones forces the fumble. John Sturdivant picks it up and rumbles 27 yards into the end zone. The Bombers get 20 in the quarter for a 34-13 lead at the half, but the Argos come back in the fourth quarter, sparked by this fake punt from Hank Alisic, who runs it for a first down. Then rookie quarterback John Kanjemi in for Dan Barrett, goes 44 yards, just the way Dieter Brock used to throw him. Ken Joyner with a reception, as the Argos get a first down on the 10-yard line of the Bombers. And a few plays later, it's Kanjemi, the pass to Darrell Smith in the end zone. And suddenly, the Argonauts are back in the ball game with a chance to tie it up on the final play, but with 5 seconds left on the clock, the pass goes incomplete. And Winnipeg wins their first game in the Eastern Conference, beating Toronto 38-30.
Still with the CFL, about half the Montreal Alouette players left unemployed by the financial collapse of the team Wednesday have been picked up by other teams. They held a draft today, and it was held on the telephone as 23 of the 45 players available were selected by the remaining 8 clubs.